Today we are here with Mike Martinez. He's reading the book Borderline and giving us his review. He's also a very accomplished musician, and I just want to hear your take on it. What were your thoughts, like your first assessment of it?
Yeah, so obviously, I've been meaning to read this book a lot sooner than I got around to it. But now, because of this whole COVID-19 thing, this was the first book I wanted to dive into. You had told me a lot about it, which kind of piqued my interest before I actually started reading it. But anyways, let me just start off first by saying that I'm not really a big book person. I don't sit around reading books all the time. But when I started reading this book, this is the first time that I've read a book from the beginning to end in one sitting, which is very rare. That just doesn't happen very often for me. And it was very captivating, and I always wanted to know like what was coming next. And I think inside this book though, it tackles a lot of stuff, including immigration, racism, just gang violence, all that stuff. And yeah, it was. I mean, as soon as I finished reading it, I had to reach out to you and shoot you a message and be like, mind blown.
That's funny. Well, actually, I did get that text like late at night last night, and I was like, you know what? I'm really excited. At the moment, I wanted to just ask you a bunch of questions, but I was
Yeah.
about to go to sleep. But so just, what do you think the overall theme is? You kind of gave me some of the talking points, but what do you think the
Yeah.
theme of the book is? I'm just curious to hear your side of it.
Um, I think the theme of it definitely is people giving other people second chances, third chances, fourth chances, so on, so forth. That's a very underlying theme in this book. It's not like super straightforward, but as you keep reading into it, you realize that's a situation that happens more and more often. Um, and I think that's very important. And then also, I know that just putting this whole book together and actually making it happen, putting it out, was a very tough. It's a very tough thing for you to do because it's very personal to your life and stuff like that. I know there's a lot of hesitancy and stuff, and maybe I should put this out, maybe I shouldn't, type of stuff. But ultimately, I think that's the other big theme of it is like just overcoming that fear of thinking of like forgetting what people think and just putting it out there.
Well, I'm actually glad you put that idea up front because for those of you that don't know, Mike actually until like earlier this week was my boss, and so I did not want to share this book with people that I worked with because I just thought it would be an awkward environment. But now that you're not my boss anymore, I was like, hey, you got to read this book. The end of the world is coming. No, just kidding. I'm talking about that. But when I was writing this book, the thing that pushed me through was I was gonna have a surgery. And I said, I got to get this done before that surgery. But
Yeah.
now all the cards are off the table. Everything's completely different. And I was like, you know what? In my head, I was like, all these books that I've written in the past, I'm just super glad that they're like 90% done so I can share them. Even if there's
Yeah.
no audience at all, I'm just grateful that I was able to get this particular project done because it took me 20 years to, bring up the courage to not care what other people thought about me and just go out on
Right.
on the limb. What
Mhm.
questions do you have about the characters or of me about the book? Do you have any questions that came up while you're reading it?
I kind of want to know what your process was like from the beginning, because obviously all the character names are different. And is there any reason why you named a specific character that name?
Um, some of the people's names are their middle names. Other names are names that rhyme with their real name. Other
Ah,
times they are nicknames that the person was called like maybe earlier in life. And then just some of them I just looked it up randomly on Google and I said Hispanic gangster names or I ran out of names and I was trying to think of ones that just had different lettering too. Um,
mhm,
and then ones that kind of related to the ethnicity of the character.
sure. Yeah, I mean, when I was reading through this book, I noticed that there was a lot of similarities within that book to my own personal life, just because I mean, my family is from Chicago, from the South Side, and all they grew up with and all they knew was gang violence. And so, luckily for me, I was born and raised in Missouri in a super small country town. Um, and my older brother, and my older sister had to move to that really small town. Like they had grown up in South Chicago and then left everything that they had known, went to the super small country town, and experienced racism. All this kind of like it was like a big culture shock because like everything that they knew was completely different in like just a completely totally different setting. And for me, like I still have family in South Chicago that are in gangs and doing gang violence and stuff like that. So it was definitely a lot personal and a lot of similarities into my own personal life as well. So it was really interesting to read.
I love that because you just pretty much described the situation in this book, going from a bigger city to then being like totally shocked at this small rural town. And then just once again, like when I went to this small town, I mean, the people I met were really great too, but it felt like I had gone into that movie called Footloose, where they
Mm.
don't allow dancing. And like, I was
Yeah,
just like, okay, what is this place? Like, I used to wear a baseball hat around that town. And in school, they'd be like, take your hat off. It's not like being a gentleman if you wear a hat in a building. And I was just like,
yeah,
where am I?
yeah,
And there's a lot
yeah.
of room for people to kind of get in trouble when they're, put
Hmm.
in an environment like that, maybe bored or, not fitting in. And that's
Yeah, and
pretty much what happened.
that was a really tough thing that my older brother went through was because he was starting to go down that road. And what really saved him in his life was that he got married, had a kid when he was 18, and through having a child, he had to really grow up really fast, turn his whole life around because he was getting into some really dark stuff. And now he's a pastor at a church
Wow.
in that same small town.
This is crazy parallel. It's
Yeah,
just really
yeah,
interesting too. So,
yeah.
um, what other experiences in your life kind of came out in this book? This is really interesting to me. I love this topic.
I think, I mean, I kind of grew up going back and forth between that small town, which was called Warrenton, in Missouri. It was really country. Like, my only friends out there were just like people who wanted to go hunting and like fishing, and like it was the most country, like redneck town I could ever imagine. And that's what
Uh-huh.
all I grew up with and I knew. And I was going between that to South Chicago back and forth on the weekends and stuff. So it made no sense when I was growing up. I was like, these are two totally different worlds. And I mean, I didn't even really get to know or establish a relationship with either of my uncles because of gang violence and just the stuff that they got themselves involved with. So that was like a big thing. And then also there's situations where the character Christian, who is you, had to kind of make decisions that was going to affect someone, but it was also kind of like the right thing that they had to do. Um, I understand those decisions too because everyone's kind of been in that situation every now and then. So that was an interesting thing.
So this entire book is predicated on a disaster happening and how it ultimately ended up unifying people. Can you tell me how you think maybe like the backdrop of today is relevant to this book, or
Yeah,
vice versa, how the book is relevant to the backdrop of today?
yeah. I mean, for those who haven't read the book yet, a lot of the situation happened because of the earthquake in Mexico City, um, and obviously in current day, there's a lot of disaster and stuff like that happening. So I think it's a really cool thing to see families stepping up to do adoptions to children in need and stuff like that who are left without parents, especially in like these disaster type of situations, because everything changes overnight. Like you never know, you're never gonna know when a disaster happens. It just happens, right? and so and then it affects your life so immediately. So yeah, I think like to answer your question, is really important that those people step up for those families in need, and those children that need um, uh, guidance and parents or a parent
So
figure.
in this book, I'm kind of curious to hear what your favorite part of the book was, or what part of the book stood out to you, like what scene or what section of the book.
I think a, it kind of okay. So there's not one specific part, but it's with one specific character who keeps getting in trouble, Jose, who keeps getting in trouble. But at the same time, you realize that that's not what he wants to keep doing. He doesn't want to keep getting in trouble, and he doesn't want to keep ending back up in jail. And he wants a better life for himself. And it's clear in the book that he's trying to make those decisions and trying to go that route. Um, but ultimately, he kind of falls back into old habits easily and stuff like that. That's one of the main things that really stuck out to me, because I know people like that, own
Yeah.
family members who have been in and out of jail so many times, and who have like who like we know they want something better for themselves, but they end up right back where they were.
So why
And like
why
I
do
said, that's
people
not,
fall into that cycle? Why do you think people fall into that cycle?
that's a good question. I mean, um, I think it has a lot to do with just their mentality. Like, if a person doesn't want to get better, no one else is going to be able to help them get better, right? Like, it's a lot
Yeah.
of like personal mentality, like that they have to overcome themselves. And some people don't really want to get past that part, or maybe they do want to get past that part, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. But I mean, I'm not I'm not a genius, so I don't know.
No, I think that's really true what you just said. I mean, not knowing how, or being so used to their current situation that actually that crazy situation actually becomes normal for them. Um,
Hmm.
so my new question that I'm asking a lot of people who are reviewing the book via video is, because this book is based off of real people, I'd like you to talk to those characters, because those real people might see this video, and I'd be curious to hear you like ask them a question or tell them something. So let's start with Jose. What would you tell Jose if he was here right now? Like
Interesting.
talk to him like, hey Jose, blah blah blah.
I mean, like I just said, Jose was one of those characters that really stuck out to me in this book. And
So talk to him directly. Don't talk to
it,
him like in the third person.
yeah, I think if I was talking to him directly, I would say what I just got done saying, was that, I mean, I don't know what the current situation is right now, where he's at, what's happening, but I think that I would say, like, it all comes down to the power of your mindset. And through that, you're able to accomplish anything, honestly. And no one else is going to be able to help you get through your own problems except for you, if you want to make that step and get forward. Um, that's for Jose. Um, for Carla, um, I would say that I'm very proud of Carla, because she has, I mean, there's a lot of development happening in Carla throughout the book. And she's almost going down this path. And the part of the book where she's in the hospital for like the person with the gunshot wound, and stuff like that, like blew my mind, how that all kind of circles back.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really brave but good decision to go into the military, for someone in her situation, because I do think that really kind of changes people's perspective. And I know people who went to the military just to get out of their own hostile environments at home and stuff like that. So and they come back totally different. And sometimes it's for the better, and sometimes it's not. But for the most part, I mean, from my own experience, I've seen people come back stronger, more
With
more
structure.
more
Yeah.
disciplined, and
Discipline,
they
structure.
and
Yeah.
and also more strategic. Whereas like before, they were just a very like big wild card. You never knew what was going to happen. Now they're
Yeah.
actually like strategically planning things out and taking care of their family that way.
I think they're thrown into adversity in the military, and then they're taught how to overcome it. So basically, it's kind of Darwinism, survival of the fittest. The weak fall off, but the
Yeah.
strong make it all the way through. And if you make it
Hmm.
through those types of trials that they put on you, then you can take on almost anything. And I think that's the whole
Yeah.
reason why they try to break you down. Um, I did want to tell you something as far as where are they now. So Jose character, he is currently on lockdown, and because of the pandemic right now, he is not allowed out of his cell for 30 days. And
Mm.
so he is like on isolation because they're afraid in the jail that it will, spread. And so he
Yeah.
has no communication with the outside world, no phone calls, no internet, no TV, and he's just basically there with his thoughts. Whereas my sister, the flip side is she is most likely going to be deployed into a hot zone very soon as a National Guard member. And so all that
Wow.
training, she's being thrown into the fire essentially. I don't know where yet. And so that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of how, one
Yeah.
guy is stuck in place and the other one is sent to the hot zone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
What would you
interesting. Sure.
what would you tell the parents in the book?
Um, I mean, gosh, the parents in the book went through so much. I mean, every character in this story and in this book has such a crazy character development. Especially, I would say, like, I mean, shout out to the mom for real. Like that mom, oh my gosh, she did the best that she possibly could. But also, it was just given the circumstances and all those situations, like there's not really a right or wrong way to deal with those types of things. So for both of the parents, I would say that they did absolutely, the best that they could, given the circumstances. Like I said, there's not a right or a wrong way to kind of to go about those things. So yeah,
Even as a parent now, during all what's going on, this chaos, it's hard to stay calm when you read all this news and all the world is kind of going like this, but to put
yeah,
on a strong face for your kids and to try
yeah,
to keep them on track. Um, I really am very grateful for what my parents did for us because, like, once again, there were fires surrounding us and we were able to kind of come out on the other side for the most part.
right,
Um, any other
yeah.
questions about, like, I think we kind of talked about this, but is there another scene in the book that really stood out for you? Like
Um, I mean, after I kept like uh after I would read something that was kind of like mind blowing, I thought the book would kind of go a little bit stale after that. But it was one thing after another that just kept happening, and all the way to the end of the book, and I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much. It's action packed, honestly, um, and uh, and so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's one specific part of the book that stood out, but it was like I said, I read this book in one sitting, so it was the entire book, honestly.
one of my favorite scenes, and it's not actually a favorite in real life, but just as a movie, if this were a movie, is the
Hmm.
moment where my Jose character, he's on the run, and then the father confronts him, and then while they're having this "you're not my father" dialogue, um, the friend of the son stabs the father in the back of the leg with an ice pick. And in real
Oh
life,
yeah,
when it happened, I couldn't believe it. I was like, how could you let your father get stabbed like that in the leg? That thing, just that idea is so weird to me that someone would like just run away from a family member who was hurt like that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that was a powerful moment for me, like in real life. I don't know about the book, but
Yeah, that actually, that specific part of the book actually kind of made me like triggered a memory for me about like I wasn't there when this happened, but I've heard the stories through my parents and my aunt and stuff. And whenever my grandfather had passed away, they had my family had gotten together for a funeral for my grandfather. So my mom's husband, and so there was a lot of tension and weird stuff happening between the family. The two brothers, so my mom's two brothers, my two uncles, kind of had a rivalry, and it was really just they would always go at it. So they never ever like attended a family function, was in the same room. But obviously, because their father had passed away, they both wanted to attend the funeral.
Yeah.
And stuff had just gotten so out of hand at the actual service. My grandmother had gotten knocked out, and
How?
she was rushed to the hospital, and they kept her there overnight and stuff like that. So she actually missed her entire husband's funeral, and
Oh,
she wasn't even there when he got buried because of something like that. Um,
wow.
and so I was just like, this was all caused because of my two uncles and their rivalry, whether it was gang affiliated or not. It was just like people are hurting their own family and like running away from it, and stuff like that, which was like kind of similar to the ice pick scene. And I was just
Yeah.
like, oh wow, that was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think we get into this tunnel vision where we just want to sometimes kind of look out for ourselves, but we don't realize that it's hurting our families too. And
Hmm.
I've
Hmm.
come across that in my own life, just even with having kids, like having this tunnel vision that we need to do one thing, and then you have to take a step back and you realize, wait, it's actually hurting your own family when you do that, when
Yeah.
you operate away.
Yeah.
I see here live we have some people on watching. One of them is Giselle. It's Giselle Music. I don't know if you read the book or not if you're watching, but I see from the comments that you may not have read the book. But what from this interview interests you about picking up that book and taking a look at it? So I'm throwing that out there. Hopefully she'll write something, but we'll put that out there for now. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask another question. Um, who do you think this book is appropriate for, Mike?
Um,
Who should read this book? That's a better question.
I think, I mean, I don't think there's a certain demographic that should be reading the book. I think everyone should read the book. As far as ages and stuff go, I think it important. I think the book tackles some very important situations. Like I said earlier, like immigration, racism, gang violence, just culture shock, stuff like that, which is important for also like the youth to be reading as well.
So like teenager maybe or
Yeah,
elementary school?
definitely. I I can't pick an exact number, like an exact age, because I mean, there's some pretty intense stuff in the book, right? And I think that maybe like um, yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe like preteen. I mean, yeah, maybe like preteen or something like that.
Yeah, because I've been kind of toying with that idea, trying to figure out what is the right age. Because I do have people at home who are, at my home, who are trying to pick up the book and go into other rooms now to read it. And I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, you can't read
Are
it yet,
you?
even though we're on lockdown. Find another book.
Has anyone in your family read the book yet?
Uh, my immediate family, meaning my wife and two kids, no, I don't think so. But my parents have read it. My sister has read it. My brother, who's in the book, I don't think he's read it yet because, once again, he's in jail. But I've
Yeah.
had nieces and nephews read it, as well as brother-in-law and various other family members, like cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So
Right.
um,
Right.
one thing I want to tell you this. This is kind of an interesting thing. Is the jail has before the lockdown was having communications. The people in the jail with their family members, and
Hmm.
on one of the communications, the one of the people who was I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but just I'll be real quick. One of the parents of one of the jail members that I don't know had mentioned that maybe that person should read this book. And I got wind of that, and I just thought that was really interesting that that was being recommended to people in jails.
Yeah.
So,
I could see how that. I could see how that could be a good thing.
yeah, it was just surreal to kind of hear a parent recommend this book for them, but I had never thought of that. But um,
Yeah, definitely.
so to summarize, I don't know what time it is, but to summarize, is there any other things that you want our audience to know about the book or why they should pick it up and read it during? this time where they got a lot of
Yeah.
time to read?
Yeah, especially now with everyone so isolated and at home and stuff like that. Um, uh, Dive into this book as soon as you can. Um, Giselle just posted a comment saying that she knows it's going to be good. Like I said, I don't read books very often. I read this whole entire book in one sitting, and it was action packed from the very beginning to the very end. It tackles a lot of very important things that's still currently happening in the country, all around the world. And yeah, overall, I think there's not just one underlying message in this book. There's many, and those are very important. So, like I said, the whole second chance thing was one theme that stuck out to me, and then just really overcoming your deepest fears about what other people think about you, and you know, digging deep into your own personal life, and kind of putting that out there was a really big thing to do. So yeah, can't recommend it enough.
All right. Well, thank you so much for once again giving us this non-biased interview. It's been a long time coming where I actually was willing to let you read it just because once again, I didn't know how you'd react. But at this
Yeah.
time, I'm really glad you did read it. And it's great that you were willing to come on video and talk to people about it. Because, we did discuss even before the book came out, the parallels that you had in your own life. So it's
Yeah.
kind of cool that it resonated with you. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you again. And let's not be strangers. Let's talk or do more of these video chats. I want to do a show maybe where we can focus on you, on your music. I want to check that out too. Like you can maybe heal the masses with your guitar and your singing.
Yeah, maybe we could do that. Definitely.
That sounds good.
Stay safe out there. Stay inside, I guess. And hopefully this whole thing blows over very soon. So, yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you say that. Like one last message I'd like to tell everyone else is, in times of disaster, we talked about this, that's when you're truly tested. And if you can actually get through this on the other side and push through your adversity, anything is possible. This is a time where we are tested more than ever. And so please use your mindset to get you through these hard times. Use your family, from those two things alone, you are like, better off than 99% of people out there.
Yeah.
Because if you can just try to figure out ways to be productive or ways to turn your life around with this, there's a lot that can happen. So that's it.
Yeah. Very
Thank
good.
you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right.